Albert Camus. Why hope won't make you happy, and what will? Absurdism. Albert Camus, a key figure in existentialism and absurdism, argued that hope is a kind of illusion that prevents people from fully embracing life. His philosophy, particularly in the Myth of Sisyphus, suggests that the human condition is absurd, meaning we seek meaning in a universe that offers none. Instead of relying on hope, which projects fulfillment into the future, Camus advocates for revolt, freedom, and passion as the keys to happiness. Yes, in Camus' view, hope delays living because it projects fulfillment into the future rather than embracing the present. This idea is central to his absurdist philosophy, particularly in the Myth of Sisyphus, where he argues that true freedom comes not from hoping for a better tomorrow, but from fully embracing today, even if life itself has no inherent meaning. Why hope delays living? Living in the future, not the present. When we rely on hope, we place happiness on something yet to come. This makes us passive, waiting for change rather than creating it. Avoiding the absurd. Hope often serves as an escape from reality, shielding us from accepting life as it is. Camus believes that confronting the absurd, without illusion, is the path to true freedom. Hope is a form of submission. If we hope for meaning, justice, or happiness to come from outside forces, God, fate, society, we surrender our agency. Instead, Camus argues for revolt, choosing to live fully in spite of the absurd. In contrast, living without hope doesn't mean despair. It means engaging in life directly, without waiting for external salvation. He suggests that true joy comes from embracing existence, experiencing passion, and creating meaning from within. Application to your work. Since your book The Path of the Unshaken explores resilience and spiritual growth, how do you see this idea of rejecting hope aligning, or clashing, with your own philosophy? Do you see hope as necessary, or do you lean toward a more Camus-like embrace of the present? Camus sees hope as an illusion because it promises meaning and fulfillment in a future that may never come, distracting us from the reality of the present. His absurdist philosophy suggests that life has no inherent meaning, and to hope for some future resolution is to deceive ourselves rather than face the absurd head-on. Why hope is an illusion? It creates a false sense of certainty. Hope makes us believe that things will get better, even when there's no guarantee. It projects meaning onto a meaningless universe, which Camus sees as dishonest. It prevents true freedom. If we hope for salvation, justice, or purpose, we bind ourselves to an external expectation. Camus argues that true freedom comes from rejecting illusions and embracing life as it is. It acts as a psychological crutch. People often use hope to avoid confronting harsh truths. Instead of engaging with the absurd, they cling to the comfort of a better tomorrow. Living without hope, the Camusian approach. Camus doesn't advocate for despair, but rather for a joyful defiance, what he calls revolt. Instead of hoping for meaning or happiness to arrive someday, he encourages us to find meaning in the act of living itself. Instead of hoping, take action. Instead of waiting for meaning, create it moment by moment. Instead of believing things will improve, accept what is and live fully anyway. How does this fit your perspective? Your book, The Path of the Unshaken, explores resilience, independence, and spiritual growth. Do you see hope as a necessary driving force, or do you lean toward Camus' idea of embracing life without illusions? Camus argues that hope creates dependence because it ties our happiness and sense of meaning to something external, something uncertain and beyond our control. Rather than taking ownership of life as it is, hope keeps us waiting, relying on something outside of ourselves to bring fulfillment. Why hope creates dependence? It relies on an uncertain future. Hope tells us that things will get better one day, leading us to tolerate suffering today. This keeps us passive rather than active, expecting change instead of creating it. It gives away our power. If we place our hope in external forces, fate, society, God, or luck, we surrender responsibility. Camus sees this as a form of mental submission, preventing true freedom. It delays action. Those who hope for a better world often wait instead of act. Camus contrasts hope with revolt, actively embracing life and shaping it ourselves. The alternative, revolt and self-reliance. Instead of hoping for meaning, justice, or happiness to come from outside, Camus calls for living fully in the present, even in an indifferent universe. He sees acceptance of the absurd as the first step to true freedom, where we no longer depend on illusions, but create meaning through action. How does this fit with the path of the unshaken? Your book focuses on resilience, self-reliance, and spiritual growth. Do you see hope as a strength that fuels perseverance? Or do you resonate with Camus' idea that hope weakens us by making us dependent? Would you redefine hope in a way that aligns with your philosophy? Revolt, accepting absurdity. In the Myth of Sisyphus, Camus presents revolt as the only rational response to an absurd world. Since life has no inherent meaning and the universe is indifferent, he argues that instead of resorting to hope, resignation, or despair, we must rebel against the absurd by embracing life fully, without illusions. What does revolt mean? Acknowledging the absurd without seeking escape. Most people try to escape absurdity through religion, ideology, or hope, but these are false comforts. True revolt means seeing life as meaningless yet choosing to live passionately anyway, living without appeal. Instead of looking for an external source of meaning, God, fate, ultimate purpose, we must stop asking for meaning at all. The absurd hero lives without appeal, meaning he no longer seeks justification for existence. He simply lives, finding freedom in defiance. By rejecting false hopes and illusions, we are left with radical freedom. If nothing is given meaning, we are free to create our own. Sisyphus as the ultimate rebel. Camus famously uses Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, as a metaphor for human existence. Instead of despairing, Sisyphus revolts. He embraces his fate and finds joy in the struggle itself. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. How this relates to the path of the unshaken. Your book emphasizes resilience, self-reliance, and spiritual strength. Camus' idea of revolt aligns with a mindset of facing reality without illusion, finding meaning in the journey itself, and refusing to be broken by adversity. Do you see revolt as a form of personal empowerment, or do you think some kind of higher meaning is still necessary? How does your idea of resilience compare to Camus' idea of embracing struggle as its own reward? Freedom, living without illusions. For Camus, true freedom comes from rejecting illusions, the comforting lies that tell us life has inherent meaning, that justice will always prevail, or that happiness is guaranteed if we just wait long enough. Instead of relying on hope or external meaning, Camus argues that freedom is found in fully embracing the absurd and living on our own terms. What does it mean to live without illusions? Rejecting false hopes. Hope ties us to the future, making us dependent on something that may never come. Camus says that instead of waiting for life to get better, we must find fulfillment in the present moment, abandoning the search for external meaning. People often look to religion, ideology, or destiny to give life meaning. Camus argues that these are self-deceptions. Since the universe is indifferent, meaning is not given, it must be created. Embracing the absurd equals ultimate freedom. Once we stop seeking meaning where there is none, we are left with radical freedom. If nothing is predetermined, we can live however we choose, shaping our own existence. Freedom in action, the absurd hero. Camus presents the absurd hero as someone who, white heavy checkmark, sees life as it is, without illusion. White heavy checkmark doesn't wait for external meaning, but creates his own. White heavy checkmark lives fully, finding joy in the struggle itself. This is not a philosophy of despair. It's a call to live intensely, authentically, and without compromise. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. Albert Camus. How this relates to the path of the unshaken. Your book emphasizes self-reliance, resilience, and independence, ideas that align with Camus' vision of freedom through self-created meaning. Do you see freedom without illusions as empowering, or do you think some level of faith/hope is necessary? How does your idea of spiritual strength compare to Camus' idea of rejecting external meaning and standing alone? Passion, engaging fully in life. For Camus, passion is the key to living authentically in an absurd world. Since life has no inherent meaning, and hope only delays living, the best response is to immerse ourselves fully in the present, experiencing life deeply, intensely, and without expectation. What does passion mean in an absurd life? Living for the experience, not the outcome. Many people live for the future, hoping for a reward, meaning, or resolution. Camus rejects this and says we should embrace life for its own sake, enjoying the process rather than seeking a grand purpose, choosing intensity over comfort. If life is absurd, why hold back? Why not throw ourselves fully into whatever brings us joy? Passionate living means engaging deeply with the world, whether through love, art, adventure, or struggle. Finding joy in the struggle. Even suffering can be lived with passion if we embrace it as part of the experience. Camus' hero Sisyphus doesn't curse his fate. He embraces the act of pushing the boulder itself. Camus' absurd man, the passionate rebel. Camus describes the absurd man as someone who, white heavy checkmark, does not hope, but acts. White heavy checkmark does not wait, but engages. White heavy checkmark finds fulfillment in the act of living itself. This is not reckless hedonism, but a deep commitment to life, fully lived. A man's work is nothing but this slow trek to rediscover, through the detours of art, those 2 or 3 great and simple images in whose presence his heart first opened. Albert Camus. How this relates to the path of the unshaken. Your book emphasizes resilience, self-reliance, and spiritual engagement with life. Camus' idea of passion aligns with the idea of fully embracing one's path, without waiting for validation or external meaning. Do you see passionate engagement as an alternative to traditional hope, or do you think some form of faith is still needed? How does this compare to your vision of the strong, unshaken man? Does he embrace life in a similar way? Why hope won't make you happy? Camus argues that hope is an illusion. It keeps us fixated on the future, preventing us from fully embracing the present. Instead of leading to happiness, hope often delays living, creates dependence, and blinds us to the reality of life. True fulfillment, according to Camus, comes not from hoping for a better tomorrow, but from engaging fully in today. 1. Hope delays living. Hope keeps us waiting for happiness instead of experiencing it now. People tell themselves, once I get that job, once I meet the right person, once I figure things out, then I'll be happy. But life is happening right now, and postponing happiness means missing it altogether. Real generosity toward the future lies in giving all to the present. Albert Camus. 2. Hope is an illusion. Hope suggests that life will eventually make sense or work out. But Camus sees this as a comforting lie. The universe is indifferent, and there is no guarantee of meaning or justice. Hoping for external meaning prevents us from creating our own meaning through action. Seeking what is true is not seeking what is desirable. Albert Camus. 3. Hope creates dependence. When we place our happiness in the hands of something beyond our control, God, fate, society, we surrender our freedom. We stop acting for ourselves and start waiting for salvation, purpose, or happiness to arrive. Instead of hope, Camus advocates revolt, a commitment to living without illusions, relying only on ourselves. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. What will make you happy instead? Instead of hope, Camus offers 3 alternatives. White heavy checkmark revolt, accepting absurdity. Instead of hoping for meaning, accept that life has none and live passionately anyway. White heavy checkmark freedom, living without illusions. Stop searching for a grand purpose and embrace the radical freedom of self-created meaning. White heavy checkmark passion, engaging fully in life. Live intensely, love deeply, create boldly. Not because life has meaning, but because it doesn't. In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer. How this relates to the path of the unshaken. Your book emphasizes strength, self-reliance, and spiritual resilience. Camus' rejection of hope aligns with the idea of embracing reality without illusion and finding power in the present moment. Do you see hope as a weakness, or do you think a certain kind of hope can be valuable? How does Camus' philosophy align with your idea of the man who walks alone? What will make you happy? If hope is an illusion, as Camus argues, then what actually brings happiness? The answer, in his view, is not in waiting for meaning or salvation, but in fully embracing life as it is. Instead of relying on hope, Camus offers 3 principles for true happiness. 1. Revolt, accepting absurdity. White heavy checkmark happiness comes from rejecting false hopes and facing life as it is. White heavy checkmark, instead of searching for meaning, embrace the struggle itself. White heavy checkmark, the absurd hero, like Sisyphus, finds joy in the act of living, not in a promised reward. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Small blue diamond application. Stop asking why and start living how. 2. Freedom, living without illusions. White heavy checkmark happiness comes from breaking free of false beliefs, religion, destiny, fate. White heavy checkmark, once we stop seeking meaning from the outside, we are radically free to create our own. White heavy checkmark, without false hopes or illusions, we live more authentically and fully. A man is always a prey to his truths. Once he has admitted them, he cannot free himself from them. Small blue diamond application. Accept that nothing is given and take full responsibility for your own life. 3. Passion, engaging fully in life. White heavy checkmark happiness is found in intensity, not purpose. White heavy checkmark, instead of waiting for meaning, throw yourself fully into life, love, art, work, adventure. White heavy checkmark, experience life deeply for its own sake, without expecting a greater meaning. Live to the point of tears. Small blue diamond application. Find passion in the present moment without asking for more. Happiness is living fully without excuses. Camus happiness is not about hope, but about action. It's about accepting life as it is, living passionately despite its absurdity, finding freedom in the realization that you owe the universe nothing and it owes you nothing. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. How does this relate to the path of the unshaken? Your book explores self-reliance, resilience, and spiritual strength. Camus' view of happiness aligns with the idea of a man who walks alone, finding strength in his own path rather than external hopes. Do you see happiness as radical self-reliance, or do you think some form of faith is still necessary? How does this idea fit into your vision of the unshaken man? Camus' happiness is not about seeking meaning, but about embracing the absurd, refusing false hopes, and living passionately despite it all. It's a philosophy of courageous acceptance rather than wishful thinking.